Now, I know that Game Week 10 isn't even over yet, but as always, there's already plenty to talk about. And in this video, I'm going to go through players to buy and avoid ahead of Game Week 11. I thought I'd start the video just by checking out a model. Not that kind of model. We got projected clean sheets here according to 11ify. This is the best kind of model, as we all know. There's a link to 11ify in the description below. Yeah, you can check it out for yourself. But what I wanted to say here, really, I'm not going to go through every team and every odd because that'd be boring. You can pause the video and check it out for yourself. But the main thing I wanted to take from this, right, is when you're looking at percentages of something happening, for something to be more likely than not to happen, it has to be greater than 50%, right? So 50 is, flip of a coin, a 50-50. More than 50 is it's expected to happen, and less than 50 is it's not expected to happen, right? In the clean sheet odds coming up for the next 5 game weeks, there are 2 occasions across all 20 teams in the Premier League for the next 5 fixtures where that is even remotely the case. Man City in matchday 14 have a 50% likelihood to keep a clean sheet. And Arsenal in matchday or game week 12 have 53. Then their clean sheet odds after that are pretty good. Don't get me wrong, but they have been shipping goals recently. And what this is suggesting to me is even these top teams here, they're not looking likely to be keeping clean sheets in upcoming game weeks. And obviously, the top teams have the most expensive defenders, and some people will probably own premium defenders. And what I'm suggesting here is, well, lack of clean sheets means lots of goals. So potentially selling these premium assets, premium defensive assets you might have in your team for other players who play like in midfield. You can upgrade midfielders, upgrade forwards, something like that. Instead of holding on to these premium defenders, because these clean sheet odds across the whole board are not looking great. And what I thought I would do, just bringing that together, is just to look at the top defenders. Well, the top cheap defenders for the next 5 game weeks. So I've filtered on Fantasy Football Hub, their predicted points tool, 4.7 million and below, and it comes out with these players. Now, I'm recording this ahead of Wolves playing Crystal Palace today. So 8 Nori's on 4 yellow cards. He could get a booking and be banned, right? And then that would obviously mean he's not a good option. And regardless, even if he doesn't get booked, he's on 4 yellow cards, so he's a bit of a risk. Outside of that, you've got Cash and Luca Dean, a couple of Brentford defenders with their good fixtures. Leif Davis, who obviously scored, unfortunately conceded at the death in game week 10, basically. Could have had a bit of a haul, to be honest. And then Mazwari of Man United. Those are your top, cheap defenders over the next 5 game weeks, according to Fantasy Football Hub. I would also probably chuck in a couple of Nottingham Forest defenders in there. Murillo, Milenkovic, Aina. I think those will do you quite nicely as well, although their fixtures do turn. They've got Man City and Arsenal away in the next sort of 3 or 4 game weeks. That's something to bear in mind, but I do think there's a case to potentially look to get rid of some of your premium defenders if you have them, to swap them for cheaper ones and upgrade in your midfield and forwards elsewhere. Because, yeah, looking at those clean sheet odds coming up, to me it suggests there's going to be a lot of goals in the Premier League coming up. But one premium defender I think you probably should keep in your team is Guardiola. He has definitely picked up, certainly from game week sort of 5 or 6 onwards, picked up from where he left off last season. He is that attacking goal-scoring defender that we all know and love from last season, right? 3 goals this season, scored again in game week 10. He's got Brighton away, Tottenham at home in the next couple. Now, those are fixtures of teams that are not that great defensively, so he could do well there. Obviously, Liverpool away in game week, game week 13, and then Forest and Crystal Palace. That's not a terrible run of fixtures. So, like I said, I do think there's a case to potentially look to sell on some of your premium defenders, like if you've got someone like Gabriel, Saliba, Trent, Robertson, something like that. But if you're on Guardiola, probably keep hold of him. His attacking stats have been outrageous, and I think, yeah, I just wanted to mention Guardiola because he's been an absolute legend in my team, and I'm struggling to sell him. But yeah, I think there's a general case to potentially look to downgrade some of your more expensive defenders for cheaper ones. You can see here, these are the top for the next 5 game weeks, and then upgrade your midfield and forwards. So on the subject of there being a lot of goals coming up in the Premier League, what we've got here is the same model, but for projected goals. So this is predicted goals for the next 5 game weeks, and I've ranked the teams by that. So the top team is actually Liverpool. Matchday 11 and matchday 12, or game weeks 11 and game week 12. They're predicted to score a couple of goals. Same with Man City, to be fair. Arsenal are up there. Spurs are up there, but I'm a little bit, I don't know about Spurs, you know. Yeah, I just don't know about Spurs, basically. Son is obviously a great option for Spurs, and they do have Ipswich in Game Week 11. They're the top predicted team for goals for Game Week 11. So I'm guessing, you know, that suggests that maybe Heung-min Son is a good option to consider for your team. Of course, they haven't played yet in Game Week 10 at the time that I'm recording this video. Other teams of note, you know, you got Man United there with a few good fixtures coming up. Yeah, bit of an interim / new manager bounce amongst them. I think Newcastle could come good. Likes of Isak and Gordon doing well. Chelsea, they've, after at least match day 11, they've got some really good fixtures and a really nice, long, good run of fixtures after that point. Other teams note, Brentford, you know, Wissa and Mbeumo doing really well this season. Villa are obviously all really good, but I'm not really saying anyone that's like a differential or completely outrageous that's going to score goals based on these projections, right? It's just saying that the good teams that we know are good from an attacking perspective are going to score goals. That's what this model is basically saying. But I think this is why I put it second, really, because I think the most interesting one is the clean sheets and the kind of narrative I said about them. So yeah, feel free to pause the video if you're interested in projected goals in a bit more detail. This is how it's looking. Some people are probably bored of the Erling Haaland conversation of whether you should sell him, but I think there's a genuine case now, to be honest. Another blank for him in Game Week 10. Missed an absolute, well, 2 sitters at the end of the game against Bournemouth. Outscored by Salah, who a lot of people would have captained, and there was a bit of a swing there, of course, on the captaincy. The fixtures get a little bit tougher for Man City coming up, and I would say over the next 4 or 5 game weeks, there is a genuine alternative captain in the game to Haaland every week, pretty much. So in Game Week 11, I would suggest that Heung-min Son is the best captain. He's got Ipswich at home compared to Haaland with Brighton away. Game Week 12, Haaland's got Tottenham at home. Obviously, that's not a terrible fixture. It's marked as red here because Tottenham are probably going to score goals. But when it comes to Man City scoring goals as well, I think, you know, Tottenham are not the best team defensively, particularly without Mickey van der Ven, who I think could have done a job on Haaland. But I think with his hamstring injury, he's going to miss that game. And instead, Salah has got Southampton and Cole Palmer has got Leicester. So, you know, Son in Game Week 11, Salah Palmer as captain in Game Week 12. Game Week 13, Haaland's away at Anfield. Palmer's got Villa, Son's got Fulham, Saka's got West Ham. So I would say all of Palmer's, Son and Saka are arguably a better captain than Haaland in Game Week 13. And then Game Week 14, Haaland's got Nottingham Forest at home, who are now 3rd in the league. Nuno has done an absolute job on them defensively, and Palmer's got Southampton. So, you know, I'd say for at least the next 4 game weeks, there's a genuine captaincy alternative to Erling Haaland. And I would say if you're spending, the reason I'm focusing on captain, I've done this in multiple game weeks before, but if you're spending upwards of 15 million on an FPL player, you want it to be a player that you're captaining pretty much every week. And I'd say if there's a 4-week period where he's arguably not the best captain, I'd suggest you could move him on. And what I've got here is a view of the top forwards ranked by expected points over the next 5 game weeks. So if you're potentially looking for a Haaland replacement, obviously Haaland is the number 1 forward for the next 5 game weeks. So I think that's to be expected. But the question isn't, is Haaland going to score the most points? The question is he worth the price, or could you downgrade and upgrade elsewhere? And beyond Haaland, you've got Alexander Isak, who obviously came back with a goal against Arsenal. He's on penalties. Obviously had a really good season for Newcastle last season. Back from his injury, 8.3 million, 12% ownership, decent fixtures coming up. Now, he could be a nice option. Obviously, Ollie Watkins is always going to be a reliable and trusted goal scorer. You know, he's got 2 or 3 seasons of Premier League goals under his belt now. You know what you're getting with Ollie Watkins. But I'd say comparatively with Isak, I probably don't like him as much because he's basically $1 million more expensive and doesn't take penalties. And he's potentially sharing his minutes with Duran. So I probably don't like Watkins over Isak. I'm not going to deny that he's a good option, but I'd probably go for Isak instead. And then you're into the cheaper forwards. And to be honest, these are my 4 favourite cheap forwards. You've got Chris Wood, Cunha, Wissa, and Raul Jimenez. And despite the great form that Chris Wood has been in, right, and he's been an absolute hero in my team, the fixtures for him and Forest, they do get a little bit tough. They've got both Arsenal and Man City away in their next 5 fixtures. So if I didn't own him, I would potentially consider looking elsewhere. Even, oh, sorry, I just hit my mic then out of excitement. Despite his really good form, I'd say Cunha, great fixtures for Wolves coming up. He hasn't played yet in Game Week 10, so anything could happen while I'm recording this video. But he's in good form for Wolves. potentially on penalties. They've got really good fixtures, probably better fixtures than Nottingham Forest and Wood has. Wissa, same sort of argument really. Great fixtures for Brentford, probably better than that of Chris Wood. And it's the same for Jimenez. He's got really good fixtures. But one thing Jimenez has over Cunha and Wissa, well, he hasn't taken a penalty yet, but the last Fulham penalty was missed terribly and taken by Andreas Pereira. So I think Raul Jimenez could be a good option. And I'd actually say he's probably my favourite cheap forward. So, you know, he's nearly a whole 10 million cheaper than Haaland. And he's actually putting up similar underlying numbers and stats. Same with Chris Wood, right? So if I was looking at a Haaland replacement, I'd suggest probably Isak, Chris Wood, and then, yeah, all those four are probably viable. But I do like Raul Jimenez as well. So, yeah, probably say Isak and Raul Jimenez right now with the fixtures they've got coming up are probably my two favourite replacements for Haaland. I want to look at FPL Review as well because we've just looked at Fantasy Football Hub, but I'm very conscious that FPL Review is also a source of data that people trust and look at for expected points. And this is what it has to say regarding the top forwards over the next 3 game weeks. Interestingly, it ranks Chris Wood really quite low down. And I think that's partly because he's got some pretty tough fixtures and also partly because his underlying data isn't actually as good as some of these other strikers. It's just a case that his finishing has been so elite that he has kind of outperformed his underlying data, which I think is what FPL Review is kind of suggesting here. But Chris Wood, by the way, it's not just this season that he's performed well. He was really good for Forest last season. I think it means now he's scored 22 goals in 30 Premier League games over the last 2 seasons. And, you know, that's the level of returns you'd expect from genuinely someone like Isak or Haaland, right? So, you know, I'm not writing off Chris Wood, despite what this model might say. Interestingly, it has Isak as the second best striker in the game for expected points, followed by Solanke. Interesting that it still favours Solanke. I'm not a big fan of Solanke with the positions he's playing. Kai Havertz, we looked, I think this is the predicted goals. Go back to the predicted goals. We looked at Arsenal. They're the 3rd best team in the league for predicted goals coming up. So, you know, he could obviously be an option. Ollie Watkins. And then a player I really like the look of is Nicholas Jackson. Once you get game week 11 out of the way, when they've got Arsenal at home, and Arsenal have been conceding goals as well, he's looking really good this season. And I think he has fixed the problems. I've just realised these are defender stats, but it doesn't matter because it's still got goals and appearances there. 9 appearances, 9 attacking returns. After the Arsenal game, he's got Leicester, Villa, Southampton and Tottenham. All games where I think Chelsea and he could score in. I also really like him as a replacement for Haaland. Other players listed here of interest. Obviously, Welbeck's pretty decent. Mateta's in there as well. He's yet to play. Likewise, Cunha. They're literally playing at the time that I'm recording this video. So, yeah, I just thought I'd do a little bit of a summary there. Obviously, a lot of people probably considering Erling Haaland at this point. I think it's the make or break point of doing it. The fixtures turn for him a little bit. He's not been in that great a form, and I think you could redistribute the funds around your team if you wanted to. And, you know, obviously, by selling Haaland, you need to replace him with a forward. So I thought I'd do a little segment on the best guys to replace him with. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. I must admit, it does feel like the getting rid of Erling Haaland narrative is becoming a little bit boring there. But I think over the last few game weeks, I've included it in my videos and spoken about it more and more. And now it's become a reality. I'm hoping I've given you some solid advice and tips there on genuine players that you could replace him with now, because I think that kind of dream or nightmare of getting rid of him has really become a reality now, where it's a real case that you could do it. So yeah, I thought I'd help you out with that video there, along with obviously the defensive changes I suggested as well. If you enjoyed the video and found it useful, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like rating. You can subscribe to the Golden Goal channel if you want to see more content from me by clicking the icon just there. I think that's everything. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.